welcome to the Strength Athlete Podcast, episode number 24. I am very excited about this episode. I think we're covering a topic that has been on a lot of people's minds and a big topic of conversation right now in general, and something that I didn't necessarily buy into over the course of the past couple of years. But now that I've had a firsthand experience seeing it, it really is something that I think has some weight and merits conversation. But before we get into that, I do want to give a shout out to the sponsor of the Strength Athlete Podcast. That's going to be SBD USA. They do make it possible for us to keep this show on the air, so please do support them by ordering through sbd-usa.com using coupon code all capitals SBD TSA. You can get free shipping on an order of any size. That could be a pair of socks, that could be knee sleeves. You could buy their whole website if you want. It's still free shipping. Beyond that, one more thing to add. If you are enjoying the show, please do make a point of leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. The more people that review our show, the more people see our show, and the more we can grow and get awesome guests on here. And we definitely want to continue to do that for you guys. So please do make a point. Go to iTunes if you don't have it on your phone, or if you do have it on your phone, it's extremely easy. If you have iTunes on your PC, it is also extremely easy. It just takes one additional step. We would appreciate that. Now, I want to introduce our guest for this episode. His name is Derek Charlebois. He is a professional bodybuilder, owner of PR Breaker Nutrition that makes what is quickly becoming a favorite cult following pre-workout in our powerlifting niche group. And Derek, if you want to just say hi.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. I'm actually pretty honored to be on here since I've watched, I think, every podcast episode so far. So it's pretty cool to be on the other end of the podcast this time.
We're happy to fulfill your childhood dream.
This was actually my last lifetime goal. So after this podcast, I'm going to have to make some new goals, so. Cool.
Bottom of the bucket here.
Cross it right off.
And we have Eric Bodhorn and Joe Stanek with us as well.
Hey, y'all.
Hello.
So in terms of our topic today, this is something that, again, I didn't really buy into. We all are participants in USA powerlifting, at least in terms of, us coaches. And Derek, I know when you compete, you would be competing in USA powerlifting. And, one of the things with drug tested powerlifting is that, we're getting drug tested. And recently there has been just a colossal amount of failures for Ostrin, which for anyone listening, if you're not familiar with what that is, that's what's called a selective androgen response modulator. And, in short, what it is, it's an anabolic substance, more or less, that helps to increase strength and lean muscle mass. Although the effects are, slightly more subtle as compared to their steroidal counterparts, they are certainly pronounced in there. And, the thing that made me want to make an episode about this is that someone that I coach and that I've been coaching for, about 3 years now, and I have a close personal relationship with, failed the drug test for Ostrin. And, I had, it was really mind blowing and kind of heartbreaking for me for that to happen. And it was just unbelievable. I just thought there was no way that could have happened. And, fortunately, there's a process by which he was able to get the supplement that he was taking tested. And as it turns out, he literally had SARS in his pre-workout. And albeit some tiny amount where, it was far too negligible to give any actual tangible performance increase. It was there. He failed a drug test and is currently banned from USA powerlifting because he took a product that was, contained something that wasn't on the label. And, that just says to me, this is a very real problem. And I think it gives credence to a lot of the people who have claimed that, because, everybody says that every single person who fails a drug test is like, oh, it was my pre-workout. And, and for the longest time, I was like, yeah, blow me. I don't care. But now that I've seen it firsthand, and now that I've seen the first person in the entire of USA Powerlifting's drug testing database to get a reduced suspension for an anabolic substance failure, that's the first one. It's the only one I could find. It says to me that it's a real thing, and a lot of people just don't have the money for it because this testing is immensely expensive. So, without, I'll get off my soapbox here. The point is, these substances in pre-workouts are a real thing, and what we wanted to talk about in this episode is, what you can look for, how you can enable yourself to avoid these sorts of things, and how to maximize your chances of not ingesting this kind of substance. So, Derek, I'm just going to throw the ball in your court here to kind of give your general thoughts on this subject. And
just kind of springboard on what you're saying. You know, in the past, a lot of times when athletes was failing is because maybe they overlooked a specific ingredient that was on the label that maybe they didn't know was banned, or, you know, maybe a stimulant was listed weirdly. But as you pointed out, in this case, it was actually an adulterated supplement that had an ingredient that wasn't on the label at all. So, I mean, that's above and beyond just someone overlooking, mistakenly taking an ingredient that was banned. So, I mean, like you said, you hear people say this stuff all the time, and maybe you're like, oh, they were juicing, just trying to cover it up, whatever. But when someone who is legitimately trying to follow the rules gets banned because a supplement or a manufacturer is not producing supplements in accordance with the GMP guidelines and FDA rulings, I mean, that's a serious, serious thing.
Right. This is a little bit different than just misunderstanding what's on an ingredient label.
Mm-hmm.
There was a warning a couple of years back from USADA about ostarine and similar SARMs having, 10 or maybe like 10 different names that could be on an ingredient label that actually is ostarine, but you wouldn't really know it by just reading the name of it. But this is actually a case where during the production of a separate supplement that was somehow contaminated with this ingredient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and honestly, it really comes down to where supplements are manufactured. There's a variety of quality of manufacturers throughout the U.S., and the FDA sets guidelines called the GMP guidelines, or the Good Manufacturing Practices, which basically are in place to ensure the supplements contain the ingredients that are listed in the quantities that are listed and are not contaminated or adulterated with any other substances. Now, what's important to point out is these GMP guidelines are the bare minimum requirements to produce supplements. You'll see oftentimes companies are like, oh, our supplements are GMP. Based on what? I mean, the FDA does not certify manufacturers or supplements as GMP compliant. They simply enforce the rules. So there has to be more effort above and beyond simply just saying we're GMP compliant to ensure that these supplements aren't tainted.
And I mean, even at the bare minimum, I think just meeting GMP compliance, your manufacturer, is kind of like having a C grade on a restaurant, right?
Right. Yep.
You can eat the food. You probably won't get sick.
Right.
But there's a serious chance there's some poop in your soup.
Poop in the soup. I like that one.
It just right
so
now.
That's a good one. But you'll see like some supplement companies will put like a GMP logo on their label to kind of like promote, hey, we're GMP compliant, which honestly does not mean anything. Putting a GMP logo on your label means absolutely nothing. It's not enforced in any way. It doesn't mean it's certified in any way. And like you pointed out, Hani, being GMP compliant is the bare minimum to produce supplements. So it's not something that the FDA thinks you should promote and actually frown upon someone putting a GMP sticker on the label.
It's almost like when certain products say all natural, just to get people to buy them.
Yeah. Well, and the same thing, in order for a manufacturer to produce supplements or anything, they have to be registered with the FDA. So you also see companies put an FDA logo on their product to make people think that it's somehow certified in a specific way. But again, an FDA label on a product means absolutely nothing. Every manufacturer has to be registered with the FDA. So those are like kind of little tricks, companies that may not be doing everything they should be doing, put on their label to make consumers think that they are.
So going a little deeper into good manufacturing practice, I've definitely seen that, the CGMP logo on people's products. So what exactly does that entail on a manufacturing side?
It's basically like a whole list of procedures that the manufacturer has to follow to ensure that the products don't become tainted, or the products contain what they actually contain. The ingredients they're using are actually the ingredients you're using. The quantities listed are the quantities used in the products. Basically ensuring that what is on the label is actually in the product. And it's also not unsafe to consume. Like certain things like microbials, bacteria, mold, yeast, all that type of stuff can form in supplements or ingredients. So there's additional testing that need to be in place to ensure that they're not at levels that could be harmful when people consume them. So basically the GMPs are just in place to make sure the product is safe to consume and it contains what it says it contains.
So when a company is GMP certified? Is it that's the term, right? They're certified.
So if a company or a manufacturer is certified, it's not through the FDA. So the FDA doesn't say you're GMP certified. What happens with that is they may get certified through a third party like NSF or Informed Choice. And basically what that means is the NSF or Informed Choice come in and make sure that you are following all the GMP guidelines that are in place. And again, that's kind of like a bare minimum, like, all right, you're following the bare minimum that you need to be doing.
All right, and so, okay, that kind of makes sense. So the whole idea of GMP is more just a set of processes to follow. It's not an actual certification, whereas the certification would be like NSF certification, Informed Choice certification.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The FDA does not certify; they simply enforce the GMPs. So what will happen is the FDA will come in and audit manufacturers, and it may be once a year, every 2 years, every 3 years. It kind of depends on the size of the manufacturer. So then if the FDA comes in and says, well, this isn't up to GMP guidelines, you have 30 days or 60 days to change your procedures to make sure you're following the GMP guidelines.
And how often would you say those sorts of audits happen?
Again, it depends on the size of the manufacturer. I would say usually every 1 to 2 years.
Okay. All right, I'm going to have to start a manufacturer and start just throwing SARMs in my product. Well, I got an 11-month and 29-day countdown.
Now, this is the thing. Like all things, I mean, with supplement companies and manufacturers, sometimes those smaller manufacturers and companies can fly under the radar, and the FDA may not come to them, till who knows how long that they've been started. And kind of going back to our beginning topic about the product tainted with SARM, any legitimate manufacturer is not producing. Like it's, again, like any manufacturer who's willing to produce SARMs, which is technically illegal, and I think they're starting to crack down on that more and more, they are not following GMP guidelines. I don't care what anyone says. Right. They simply wouldn't do it.
So in general, would you say that, so the big manufacturers, obviously, they're not trying to risk, their millions of dollars of business for the 1 or 2 customers that might want to produce a powder form or a pill form Austrian supplement.
Yep.
So in general, it's kind of the low hanging fruit, the cheap manufacturers that are kind of scrambling for as much business as possible, that are more likely to fall out of the realm of following FDA law to begin with, and thus even more probable that they are going to have those bad manufacturing practices.
Yes, exactly. And a lot of times it is the smaller manufacturers who also have smaller minimum quantity runs. So like, a small company may come in and say, we want to run 50 bottles of this SARM. This manufacturer will do it because, like you said, they're just trying to make money as quick as possible in whatever way possible. But, a reputable manufacturer who's doing thousands and thousands of bottle runs is not going to risk their entire operations to run this small run of this illegal product. So it's kind of like the cost of entry to run stuff like SARMs is a lot lower because they're not doing things the right way versus running a legit product at a larger manufacturer where there's going to be more costs.
Let's say a company, the FDA comes in and discovers something like that with a company. Is there like a public place where that's normally found, that the FDA
there usually
talks
is
about that?
Yeah. The FDA, like any sort of warning letter that the FDA gives to a supplement company or manufacturer, can be found on the FDA website. And usually, a lot of times when stuff like that happens, you can also find it in like headlines elsewhere. There's a website called Natural Product Insider, which often lists like all the serious stuff that happens. I just was reading on there today. Apparently, some company, also based in Texas, oddly enough, was selling a pharmaceutical weight loss drug as an herbal weight loss supplement. So that I think that person's serving 6 years jail time because they were selling basically a mislabeled drug. So it's, again, like there's so much of this stuff goes on in the industry, and it's pretty sad.
Any idea what the name of that supplement was? I'm just wondering for science.
It was the goofy. No, like I don't remember the name offhand, but if you had read the name, you'd be like, I'm not taking this supplement. Like it was something ridiculous.
Kind of like a classic muscle tech product, right? Lose 36 pounds in 48 hours, sort of thing.
And it had like an X and a 20, like just like weird, crazy name. But yeah, but it's one of those things. People think they can get away with stuff, and eventually they're going to get caught.
So But taking this one step further, you said the kind of the bigger risk is going to be with smaller production run manufacturers, people who basically do kind of like a job shop, if you will, of supplement producers, where they'll take any work they can get,
Yep.
and as such, they may cut corners because they simply don't have the money to hold themselves to that high standard or to get the certifications for things like NSF or Informed Choice, which we'll talk a little more about.
Mm-hmm.
So in your case, as the operator of an independent supplement brand, I know that you have, basically you could shoot a request out to probably 10 different manufacturers asking for a production run of the pre-workout that you make material. And I would imagine that, obviously there's a range of prices you can get there, from the Cadillac down to the Honda.
Mm-hmm.
And, you kind of want to stay towards the higher end of that list. And so would you say that in general, smaller resellers of supplements tends to be, or let's say smaller brands tend to be more at risk for these sorts of things?
Yes, absolutely. Again, it's going to be a combination of simply being misinformed or not educated on what to look for. And also the price range. If it's a new company starting out and they have a limited amount of funds, and supplement, manufacturer A quotes them for half the price of manufacturer B, as a new company, they're most likely going to go with the lower price manufacturers. And they might not know enough to know why it's that much less, or what's not getting done at that manufacturer.
So in general, as a general initial take home for listeners here, if you're subject to drug testing and you like pre-workouts, awesome. We all love caffeine. Stay, for the most part, unless you're working with a brand that has some sort of additional testing done on their products, be it NSF, be it Informed Choice, steer clear of that stuff. You're kind of putting yourself at risk every time you put that in your body. And because you're buying from a small band, you're probably paying premium dollar for your product anyway. So you could get one of a number of products that are going to be produced in a more safe manner. And it's really about the production. And this doesn't fall onto the owner of the small brand a lot of times. They don't know what's going on. They're simply having a manufacturer produce their product. It's the manufacturer that's adulterating. And it's not like they want to throw money away and put SARMs in these products, right? Because they're ineffectual doses. It's just bad practices in their facilities, or utilizing the same machinery to encapsulate one thing as they're using to mix another. And in that process, you get that one like nanogram of a SARM in your product, and that's it. That's all you need. You take that product on a day that you're getting drug tested, and you'll fail. So this is kind of about minimization of your opportunities to be exposed to that.
Yeah, and like you said, there's 2 ways to prevent something like that from happening. If the manufacturer does produce SARMs, they need to adequately and properly clean their manufacturing equipment before producing the next product. Or 2, go to a manufacturer who doesn't even use those ingredients at all, to totally bypass that, possibility of a product getting tainted. Because even if stuff is properly cleaned, there's still a chance that somehow something's going to get missed, which could be the case in, the product in question that we're talking about earlier. If, they produced and blended SARMs together, then use that same blender to blend that pre-workout with either not properly cleaning it, or who knows if they cleaned it at all, I don't know. It's going to taint whatever's blended next.
Yeah, if you look at the lab results from the one that we were just talking about, it was like 100 nanograms per gram of product. It's a very, very small amount and nowhere near an effective dose, but it's enough to still show up on a test.
Right. And like Hani pointed out, in that case, it's not a case of the supplement company saying, hey, let's be sneaky and put some SARMs in our pre-workout. It's a case of, the manufacturer was at fault for not properly producing the product.
Speaking of sneaky supplement producers, did you guys ever try the original Driven Sports Craze?
I tried it once. I'll tell you my story. I took it in the morning. That afternoon, I could recall an Excel spreadsheet vividly, and every column number, row number, everything. I'm like, no, on column C, row 54, it said this. Dead serious. I'm dead serious. Like, so I was like, that was before they announced what was in it. And then after they announced, I'm like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I was trying to. What was that, Joe?
I was going to say it was his own little Limitless moment.
Yeah.
It's what it felt like. You know, that scene in the movie where he takes it and it's like everything gets brighter color all around him. I mean, I happened to get my hands on one original tub of that back then. And, well, it wasn't like I wasn't seeking it out. I happened to buy it because it was popular. And man, it was definitely drugs in there.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah,
it was, and, you know, I think that was an instance, and I don't know this for sure, but I think that was somewhat of a marketing ploy on their part, right? Because it sold out so fast and they did one run that it was impossible to produce a proper chain of custody on the original lot that contained that. And they could keep selling what ended up being an extremely diluted version of that product for years.
Right. I believe, if I remember correctly, in that case, that was purposefully added into the supplement, like I said, maybe just the first run. And then they said, oh, you know, it's this dendrobium herb extract that's so potent. But like I said, I think the test showed there's straight up like an amphetamine in the product, like straight synthetic compound in the product. But again, and you know, that's, as we're talking about, that's something for consumers to be on the lookout for. If there's these weird herbal extracts in supplements or pre-workouts, that's something you want to stay clear from, because oftentimes companies will use those herbal extracts to hide maybe a synthetic ingredient that is illegal or banned.
Okay.
Most definitely.
Maybe on that subject, is there anything else that people should look out for?
I mean, I think Bryce posted this on his Facebook, but he's kind of like, you know, consumers almost need to learn the FDA rulings for labeling laws, and that's kind of true. Because, like, if I look at a label, I can say, well, this isn't following label guidelines, this isn't following label guidelines, I would say for consumers, one thing I've noticed lately is ingredients being listed as their branded name and not the chemical name. For example, there's a newer stimulant called dynamine or something along those lines. And I saw a company list that on their label as dynamine, but didn't list what the actual ingredient was. No reputable manufacturer would allow that label to be run because it's mislabeled. So you kind of need to learn like ingredient names as a consumer so you know if products are labeled properly.
In general, I think a safe rule is if you can't find it easily with a simple Google search of the name that's on the label of that ingredient, you know, if it doesn't come up right away, if it's not the first or second or third result, you probably shouldn't put that in your body. As a general rule, you know, you don't know what you're ingesting at that point. And, you know, and it's not, obviously it might make you feel good right now. You might take that stimulant and feel fantastic, but we're talking about substances that over the longer time frame, you simply don't know what the effects are going to be. And you don't know the impact that's going to have on your general health. And I like to think that the fitness community is largely in complete disregard of their general health, right? Everybody is thinking about right now, how can I get as jacked and lean and strong and vascular as possible? But very few people have taken into consideration, you know, what impact is this going to have on my brain or my heart or my, you know, my cardiovascular system for the remainder of my life. And, you know, I'm certainly no complete exception to that. I'm an absolute caffeine fiend, and, you know, I definitely enjoy my ethanol. But there are certain things that have been around for a long time. You know, people have been drinking caffeine for hundreds of years. People have been drinking ethanol in some form, be it in beer or distilled spirits, for also thousands of years, I think, dating back to what is ancient Egypt. And so it's, you know, there's things that have an established safe use and things that simply have no research behind them, or no long-term research anyway, right? The SARMs are, I think their intention was to treat muscular dystrophy or muscle wasting diseases in general, I think. And, you know, they've been around for maybe 20, 30 years, but in the scope of establishing long-term effects, that's just a blip. That's no amount of time whatsoever.
Well, and that's what's so scary is, you know, supplement companies will jump on whatever new ingredient, new stimulant is available, even if there's no human research behind that ingredient. I know when 1,4-dimethyl got banned, even though it's still on the market, we can talk about that in a little bit, but like all these other dimethylated type stimulants are being sold right now. And if you search those ingredients, there are no human studies on them. So like you're ingesting something that no one has researched the effects on in the human body. And to me, that's scary. Like you said, it's like you don't know what the long-term effects of these ingredients are. You may get a nice little energy stimulant boost high for a little bit, but who's to say you're not causing serious harm?
So actually expanding on that, Talk about the I think the original ingredient was 1,3-dimethylamylamine, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was they purported it as an extract of geranium extract. That's what it was. Geranium before dendrobium, right? Those were like the two most recent big herbal stimulant bullshit to cover up some synthetic compound products. Yep. So that was banned outright. The FDA banned that ingredient, but it's still being sold on the market. How's that possible?
It's still being sold. The guy who's still selling it has been fighting against the FDA, and I think it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court finally ruled that, you cannot sell this, but he's still fighting it and still selling it. I don't know what the end outcome is going to be. I'm going to guess he's going to serve jail time because he's continuing to sell these products. And the person who's selling it also has a manufacturing facility. So he's probably the one manufacturing all these supplements that contain it or contain like the derivatives of the dimethyl stimulant. So yeah, it's one of those things where if you have enough money to fight something in court, you can prolong it. And I'm guessing he's making enough money to justify doing so.
That's fair. It's unfortunate to see that though, and I guess that's kind of a fault in the legal system, and that's a can of worms that we don't even need to open, right? But so we talked about NSF and Informed Choice. Tell us about what those mean in terms of a supplement.
Yeah, so like NSF, how we're saying, there's two forms of certification for NSF. They can do the GMP certification, which like we talked about is coming in and making sure you're following GMP guidelines. And then there's also NSF for sport, which kind of bridges the gaps between the GMP guidelines and what we need as tested athletes. So in addition to all the other testing, they're coming in and testing the manufacturing facility to make sure there's not any banned substances being used. So they'll come in twice a year, and they take swabs of various places in the manufacturing facility. They also look at your ingredients, the ingredient suppliers, the sourcing, and the testing, basically to ensure that there's no banned substances on the premises at all.
Are they testing finished products at all for that?
They do. They do test some finished products. So like as a manufacturer, they'll test some of your finished products. Then in addition, as a supplement company, you can have your own supplements be NSF certified for sport as well. And in that case, they'll test your finished product. And I believe they also, at some point during the year, will buy your finished product from a store and test it directly from there. So it's kind of like a dual way to test, straight from the manufacturer and what's actually being sold on the shelves, which is just, I guess, kind of a way to ensure that they weren't given a product. They are legitimately testing what is being sold versus potentially, let's say, you gave them like a fake bottle to test that is safe type of thing. Because again, supplement companies are shady, so I wouldn't put anything past them, trying to pull something like that. But
they're just legal drug dealers, really.
Yeah,
they're like a less regulated pharmaceutical company, right? They get to sell stuff that doesn't give you quite as good of a high, right? But it definitely is out there. There's a much broader market because of the fact that you can walk into any GNC and buy these things. People aren't so scared of them. Mm-hmm. And obviously they're not like prescription opiates in terms of how addictive they are, but caffeine is certainly a habit forming substance, and I think that's the basis of all of this is caffeine.
Yeah. And like you're saying, at least there's safety studies behind caffeine, so I don't feel bad about drinking it, but I would say it's one of the safer of the ingredients out there, but can definitely be overused.
Right. Like anything, too much of a good thing, it eventually can become a bad thing. Mm-hmm. So is Informed Choice kind of similar to NSF?
Yeah, Informed Choice is very similar to NSF. I would say NSF is a little more established and prestigious. Informed Choice is a little less expensive as well, so that's why you see a lot of companies go that route instead of NSF, simply due to cost. But again, I was going to say it's both similar testing criteria.
So specifically with PR Breaker Nutrition, your brand, mm-hmm. What as an independent manufacturer, or rather an independent reseller, so for anyone listening, Derek doesn't actually produce his own products in his bathtub. He outsources to it sounds ridiculous, but there have been people who've done that.
Yep,
that's a very real thing. But what process did you go through to find a manufacturer? How did you pick the one that you chose, and how does this impact the fact that we can expect to not have tainted supplements from your brand?
Yeah, so for those who don't know, I worked in the supplement industry for 12 years before starting PR Breaker. So over those 12 years, I've worked with a variety of manufacturers of all sorts of levels. So I've seen some good manufacturers and I've seen some bad manufacturers. The manufacturer that produces materia is both NSF for Sport certified and Informed Choice for Sport certified, which means they're getting audited by both those two organizations twice per year. So that's 4 times per year they're getting audited to make sure there's no banned substances in the facility at all. And the reason why I chose this manufacturer is I had worked with them in the past and I knew they were legit. And obviously because of the certifications that they have to ensure that my products aren't going to get tainted.
So I've looked at your I mean I use materia as the pre-workout that I'm using on a regular basis, but you don't have an actual NSF label on your product.
Right.
So that's just an additional expense for you, right?
Yeah. So in order for me to be able to put the NSF logo on my product, I would have to pay NSF directly to do the testing, like I said, where they would test the product from outside the manufacturing facility. But the fact that it is produced at an NSF for Sports certified facility would allow me to get that certification if I choose to do so. And at this point, being a newer company, it simply just comes down to cost because, again, the NSF certification is pretty expensive. But again, like everything that I would need to do is already being done. I would just basically have to pay for the certification.
What are the costs involved with that for your company?
Thousands of dollars per lot.
Yeah.
It's pretty expensive. It's I think Informed Choice is like 1/4 of that, but it's per lot. So every time you produce a new lot of the supplement, you would have to pay those costs again. It's not, I wouldn't say it's unreasonable, but it's definitely an added cost. But as my company grows, I do plan to go for those certifications so I can put them on my label.
Okay, so say somebody else is taking another, similar small line product. Is there any way for them to know about the manufacturing process that they might have these certifications, or is that not something that's always publicly available?
That's not something that's normally publicly available. And as a consumer, you really don't know or can't tell where products are being produced. And that's kind of where it comes along, just learning. I mean, it's like we were talking about earlier, it's kind of hard when you look at the label and you say, every ingredient is an approved ingredient, and then something, foul play comes in. But like as a consumer, you're kind of at the mercy of the supplement companies themselves. And, outside of them having the NSF or the Informed Choice logo on their product, hoping that they are following these guidelines. And I mean, that's really the scary part of it, though.
It's a tough position to be in, because as a mindful consumer, my inclination is that I want to support small business, right? I don't really want to buy supplements from Optimum Nutrition. And that's not because I dislike them or because they produce inferior products. The odds are that they're producing superior products, at least in terms of quality, to the majority of other brands. And that's just because of buying power. And they simply have the leverage to go to a manufacturer like the one that you're using, Derek, and say, listen, you're going to give us 25% off this quote because we're going to order $10 million of stuff from you. And, what you end up in a position like that, you're making too much money as a manufacturer to say no. But when you're talking about someone who's producing a lot of 100 or 200 tubs at a time, 300 tubs at a time, maybe 1,000 even, that's still like a small to medium sized brand, right? Then the profit on that whole lot is probably, some small multiple of what it would cost just to get that NSF certified. So it's just unfeasible, or you would have to add $10 a tub to your pre-workout to be able to make that financially reasonable. And, materia is a premium product. And so it's not cheap as it is. And you kind of get what you pay for in that case because of the fact that it has the ingredients and the doses that it does. And this is the same with a lot of other products. And this is something you can look for too. If you're seeing a product that has a profile of expensive ingredients, if you're getting multiple gram doses of citrulline and you're getting a full dose of the brand name creatines and things like that, and you're paying 50 cents a serving, you're probably not getting what's on the label in that product simply because, or if you are, you're not getting the brands that are on the label in that product simply because it's not possible to produce that product for that price.
Yeah. That was, I think someone had commented on Instagram. They're like, oh, your product's pretty expensive. I'm like, yeah, it's expensive to make. And as you said, in addition to just the ingredient cost, I also have built in the cost of all the testing that goes into materia, before the product's even made and the post-manufacturing testing itself. So, I mean, and like you said, going back to lot size, using just random numbers, let's say this test costs $1,000 and I produced 100 bottles. That means that increases the cost of every bottle significantly. Versus if a test costs $1,000 and you're doing a run of 10,000 bottles, then that cost of the test is spread out a little more evenly. So like these smaller manufacturers and smaller companies that are doing these very small limited runs, they're not going to do as much testing just because of the cost per bottle it would take to do them.
Yeah, and the someone who doesn't really understand business would say, well, Derek, why don't you just produce 10,000 tubs? And obviously, number one, because who's got that kind of cash sitting around, and number two, those would go bad before you sold them. And so there's you have to balance that. You have to stay in business. These people have to stay in business. And so as much as I hate to give support to those big brands, for certain products you simply need to, because you can't buy like protein powder, for example. There was the whole nitrogen spiking, was it? Or the glycine. They were spiking products with glycine, I think.
Taurine.
Yeah, to get the readings of the protein in their products higher, even when tested. But when you broke it down to what was actually in it, it was totally useless amino acids that simply read on that particular type of test. And the best way to avoid these sorts of things is to buy from people who are producing, buy from brands that stand to lose the most if they screw you over. And that's kind of how I look at it. Optimum Nutrition is never ever going to have Ostrin in one of their products, because if one of the professional athletes that takes their stuff pops on a test and decides to go after them legally, they have so much to lose. So it's you have to walk this line between choosing a brand that has the background of putting the quality and the thought and the dollars into their product, and also choosing products that suit your financial ability, obviously, because for all of us, supplements are a luxury. They're supplemental in name and in definition. So, what do you think we should be on the lookout for? What are the signs that a consumer should kind of have their eyes on for products to avoid, just outright? What should, if I see that, I shouldn't take that?
Yeah. Like I said, like funky herbal extracts you've never heard of before. That's probably the easiest thing for consumers to look for, because oftentimes companies will use an herbal extract to hide some sort of ingredient. If there's errors on the label, be it the format, again, it's kind of like you almost need to learn the supplement label laws and rules to easily point this out. But if there's errors on the label, if the supplement facts panel isn't listing ingredients correctly, things like that, like just blatantly obvious errors on the label, because any manufacturer would not produce a product with those labels, because then that comes back on them. So as consumers, like, you honestly really need to learn about ingredients, how they're labeled, dosages, things like that. So you can just pick up a bottle and look at it and say, well, this ingredient name is listed incorrectly, so I know it's not legitimate.
Is there an easily available resource that has those labeling laws on it?
Yeah, I'll send you a link after this that one you can look at. And again, it kind of just comes down to learning ingredient names, common names, structural names, things like that, just so you know what to look for. But as a consumer, I would just say be wary of herbal extracts, brand new ingredients that you've never heard of before, because oftentimes those ingredients don't have much research behind them. So yeah, just don't buy into hype. Basically, new ingredients doesn't mean it's a good ingredient. Which, companies love to say, well, we're the first to market with this ingredient. Well, there could be a reason why you're the first to market, because no one wants to use it, type of stuff,
Absolutely, and in general, the supplements are, if someone's getting tangible muscle building or serious actual performance enhancing benefits from what is purported as a drug-free and or natural supplement, odds on there's something in that product you shouldn't be taking. Don't get excited and grab it thinking, oh, this must be the secret. The secret is that there's something not on the label or mislabeled in that product. Right.
And when it comes down to it, there's honestly only a handful of ingredients that are actually beneficial for people to take. So again, as a consumer, if you take the time to look into ingredients and research what is actually beneficial to take, you can easily tell, what products are relying on hype or relying on ingredients that don't work to try to sell products. And you can learn what ingredients work and which products you actually need to take.
Yeah, our friends over at examine.com do a really good job of that. You can type in pretty much any supplement ingredient, and you could pop up a well, robust, researched summary of everything that does.
Yeah, and also I forgot to point out, like, one thing I recommend that consumers avoid at all costs is products with proprietary blends. So the blends allow the company to hide the dosages of the ingredients they're using. And in my mind, if you're using adequate dosages, you have nothing to hide. There would be no point to use a blend because you would want to promote the fact that you're using adequate dosages. So again, anytime you see a proprietary blend, don't buy it. I don't care what company it's from.
Easy peasy.
Yeah.
So, and you know, I'm always conflicted on the proprietary blends, but I tend to agree with you. I do want to build on that and say that I don't think that those are necessarily a sign of a tainted supplement, but more so a sign of something that's maybe not dosed effectually per the research.
Right. Yeah, I wouldn't say. I mean, because again, a lot of the bigger companies that, like you said, probably do have really high quality standards may use proprietary blends because they may be trying to protect their blend of ingredients or whatever. But that doesn't mean they're hiding an illegal ingredient. They're just hiding the dosages.
Right. Which may also be that they're hiding an illegal ingredient, or that I think more likely the case is that bad manufacturing gets passed along to small resellers of supplements by way of the fact that they simply went with the lowest bidder to produce their product. I don't think there's a lot of companies out there that are intentionally wasting money really on putting these expensive ingredients into their products that are, you know, filled with much more affordable ingredients in an effort to, because it's not like there's an immediate reward to taking, you know, SARMs. It's not like you take Ostrin and the next day you have 10% on your maxes. You have to take that stuff for months to get some tangible effect from it, and in an efficacious dose. So the cost associated with that, kind of the long-term payoff, it's simply not something that would make sense. Even if you were trying to do that from a business standpoint, it simply doesn't make sense.
Right. I mean, and there are companies that do purposefully do that type of stuff. I know of a company that was selling a male enhancement product, a sexual male enhancement product that had Viagra in it, and they got busted by the FDA and rated and all that stuff. But that was like a purposeful put Viagra into this product type of thing.
Do you know the name of that product?
I don't offhand. But yeah, I mean,
that was wasn't that Black Magic back in the day? I think actually.
But again, so like Black Magic or whatever they were, those were all like herbal type supplements, because then you could hide like, oh well, this plant produces this natural steroidal compound, blah blah blah. But really, like, I also heard of a company. They were a U.S. company, but they were only selling in Europe that would put straight up D-Bol in their natural herbal supplement. And the reason why they got busted is it got stopped in the European customs and tested, and D-Bol showed up.
How funny is that? Just D-Bol in your pre-workout?
Just D-Bol. It's like, so I mean, it does happen. Like you said, it's less likely that a company's just going to straight up do that type of stuff unless they're just crooked. And again, those companies will always get caught at some point. And in instances like that, where they're purposely putting all these illegal drugs or ingredients in the product, they're going to serve jail time. Like, it's a serious offense. It's not just like a slap on the wrist type of thing. It's you're going to get fined and you're going to jail for some period of time.
I did have another question while we're still on that topic. So we've seen a lot of people in the past year fail for Ostrine or similar SARMs, and it seems likely that at least some percentage of them were victim to a tainted supplement, because we saw a real-life example for one of the people that we work with. Prior to that, in 2016, 2017, we saw a lot of people fail for Turinabol. Some of that was probably because there was a better test developed to find that. But a lot of them also said that, you know, it was something where they were victim to a tainted supplement or pre-workout or whatever it may be. How likely do you think it is that was actually the case?
So Turinabol, or whatever it is, I assume is a straight-up steroid, correct?
Yeah, it's a highly expensive, highly bioavailable, low impact on your liver, like safest steroid there. It's super it's like the most expensive steroid you can buy.
See, in an instance like that, a manufacturer isn't going to be producing a supplement with that steroid in it. So that could be a straight up case of, you know, purposefully putting it in a product. I mean, that's really the only thing I could think of, because it's not like they're putting that in capsules for someone else, because no one's selling that ingredient by itself. So like in an instance like that, I would feel like it was almost purposeful.
They do sell it in oral form.
Not legally.
But a supplement manufacturer wouldn't be making those capsules or
Right.
tablets, whatever it is. So, or if it's a case where someone was producing that, then they're doing illegal activity to begin with. So, and that I was gonna say that could be a case where, you know, some local guys, you know, making steroids himself, and they mix up their own pre-workout in a Home Depot jug in their bathroom, use the same jug that they mixed up their steroids in. I mean, that's really the only thing I can think of in a case like that.
To build upon that, so you know, kind of connecting the dots here. So what is being said is that, you know, there's a possibility that you could end up with you know, SARMs in a small run pre-workout, because SARMs, while technically illegal to produce, are not outright illegal. So there are still people producing them, whereas actual steroids like oral turinabol is an illegal substance to produce and sell. It's I don't know where that falls on the schedule of drugs, but it's something you actually can be arrested for, is selling those things. So there's an extremely low possibility that a supplement manufacturer who intends to stay in business is putting that in, or is touching that at all. The fact that the idea of that entering the door of any supplement manufacturer, reputable or otherwise, is next to nothing. So for people who I think failed for that substance in particular, and, you know, I think I remember a case where someone said they got it from their C4, which is asinine. Cellucor is not. They probably have their own manufacturing facility. There's no way there's turinabol in their facility. Probably plenty of it in some of the sponsored athletes, but none of it in the facility. But the idea of that, the idea that Cellucor would have that in their manufacturing facility, is asinine. That company could lose hundreds of millions of dollars.
Right.
If that was the case.
Yeah. So like in a large manufacturing facility, like the ingredients are tested prior to being used, and oftentimes the manufacturer will qualify ingredient suppliers. So they'll use that same ingredient supplier or manufacturer facility, you know, in China for every single run of that ingredient. So for example, like Materia, every run I do uses the same ingredient supplier for citrulline moly. Comes from the same factory. It's tested before every manufacturing run. So it's like you establish a relationship with that ingredient supplier, and you also have, you know, previous test results to confirm what you're getting is exactly what you want it to be. So for, like you said, for a supplement company like Cellucor is producing C4, they have preferred suppliers they're using. They're not just taking, you know, random creatine from whoever they can get it from. So for something like a steroid to get into their product, I mean, it's honestly not possible.
Back on something with the legal side of things, I know the current status of SARMs is kind of up in the air. Are you a little bit more familiar with what's going on with them currently, and do you see them being outright illegal here very soon?
Yeah, I think they'll be just outright illegal soon. And I think right now the FDA is more focused on the 1,3-dimethyl, because I just read something this week to where in the past, if a company was selling 1,3-dimethyl, they would send you a warning letter saying, you know, you have 30 days to discontinue selling this. Now they said they're just rating people, just going straight up in and just taking the product. So I think they're getting a little more serious about that. And I think once that is kind of done with, they'll move on to SARMs. And the issue is, I mean, the FDA manpower is limited. So again, if something's going wrong, they're going to go after the bigger companies or the bigger issues first. And so these smaller companies with stuff like going on with the SARM tainting, they might fly under the radar for a little bit, or, you know, the FDA may not swoop in and get them for it. But it's kind of like, you know, the little fish get away with stuff while the big fish suffer.
Cool. Well, I think that's a good point for us to wrap up here. We've covered a lot, and you know, this is a gigantic subject, and you know, I think we'll kind of learn more as we go. Right? It's an interesting time to watch what's happening in the supplement industry. I think it's been interesting for the past 5 to 10 years, just watching things unfold, and yeah, who knows what'll show up next, you know, until the next slightly anabolic substance that makes you grow a third leg, or whatever it may be that the long-term unknown side effect is. But the point is, you know, be informed about the products you're putting into your body. You can always send an email to the company. You could send an email to PR Breaker Nutrition, and Derek is going to reply to it. I don't know what he's going to say in the reply. probably something nice, but he maybe not. But he's going to reply to that email. And if you asked about the testing or the manufacturing, I imagine there's going to be a fair degree of transparency there, because there's some pride in the fact that that product is produced for people who do not want to get anything in their body that isn't on the label of the product, drug testing or otherwise. You can count on the fact that what's on that label is in that product, and he's transparent about that. And I think that's something that is undervalued and underappreciated. So, as a general rule, what I always say is, if you can't easily access or contact the person or the people that are making that product and find out the steps they take to ensure that it's safe, you should probably avoid that brand. And you probably shouldn't take anything from them. And major brands are generally going to be quite safe. Your Cellucors, your Optimum Nutritions, your Cytosports, brands that are producing millions of tubs of their products on an annual basis you're probably going to be fine there. But there's always, I think there's lists online. I think Informed Choice has an accessible list online of the products that are certified by them, and I think NSF does as well. And you can always look up and try to compare against that list. And I imagine sticking to that list entirely is probably among one of the best things you can do to bolster yourself against these kind of errors. But again, just be aware of what you put into your body. One more thing before we wrap up, just another shout out to the sponsor of the Strength Athlete Podcast, SBD USA. You can read about our relationship with them at sbd-usa.com/TSA. And again, the coupon code for free shipping is all capitals, SBDTSA. Thanks everyone for listening. Derek, thank you for joining us. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Pleasure.
Where can we find you on social media if we want to get in touch with you or pester you about your products?
I'm mostly on Instagram. You can find me at Derek Charlebois. I was going to say .com, but just at Derek Charlebois. You can also contact me through prbreaker.com. There's a contact link on the bottom of the page. Or you can email me directly at derek@prbreaker.com.
So PR Breaker, is there a hyphen there?
Not in the website name.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, I am at Hani_TSA on Instagram. We got Eric_TSA and Joe_TSA. There's a theme here, in case you're getting that, with only wonderful falling out of the format. But that's about it for now. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you soon on the Strength Athlete Podcast.